I'm Brooke, 34, and I've spent my entire career helping people find their dream homes. 5 years ago, I finally bought my own house, my sanctuary, with my parents as co-signers. Last month, I discovered they secretly transferred the deed to my younger sister Amanda without telling me. When I found out, I stopped paying the mortgage. Now the bank is taking the house away. Yesterday, my parents and Amanda showed up at my new apartment with suitcases. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to join me on this journey of betrayal and boundaries. Growing up in the suburbs of Boston, I always had this crystal clear vision of what success would look like. While other kids dreamed of fame or adventure, I fantasized about having my own home. A place that was truly mine, where no one could tell me what to do or how to live. My parents, Thomas and Elaine Williams, raised us in a modest three-bedroom ranch-style home. We weren't poor, but we weren't wealthy either. Dad worked as an accountant at a local firm, and Mom taught third grade at the elementary school down the street. From an early age, I watched how hard they worked to keep our family afloat. The careful budgeting at the grocery store, the delayed vacations, the conversations behind closed doors when they thought we were asleep. It all taught me the value of financial security, and I promised myself I'd achieve it. During high school, I started working at 16, juggling a job at the local coffee shop while maintaining my grades. By college, I was working 3 part-time jobs simultaneously: waitressing on weekends, campus bookstore during weekdays, and online tutoring in whatever spare moments I could find. My friends thought I was crazy missing out on the college experience, but I was focused on my goal. Every dollar went into my savings account, labeled simply "Future Home." After graduation, I got my real estate license. There was something poetic about helping others find their homes while working toward my own. I threw myself into my career with everything I had: long hours, working holidays, taking clients nobody else wanted. Gradually, my reputation grew in the greater Boston area as someone who would go the extra mile to find the perfect property. For 7 years, I lived in a tiny studio apartment with barely enough room for a bed and a desk. The bathroom was the size of a closet, and the kitchen consisted of a mini fridge, a microwave, and a hot plate. But I didn't care because every month my savings grew closer to my down payment goal. When I finally hit my target amount at 29, I began the search for my own home. The irony wasn't lost on me that after helping hundreds of clients find their perfect match, I was incredibly picky about my own. After 3 months of searching, I found it. A 1920s craftsman-style house with original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, and a bay window in the living room that caught the morning light in the most magical way. The kitchen needed updating, and the bathroom was stuck in the 80s, but I could see past all that to what it could become. The asking price was slightly above my budget, and with my limited credit history, despite excellent savings, the bank was hesitant to approve my mortgage application. That's when my parents offered to co-sign the loan. I was reluctant at first, knowing how mixing family and finances can complicate relationships, but they insisted it was just a formality. Their credit scores would help me secure better terms, and I'd be making all the payments anyway. "We trust you, Brooke," my father said when we signed the papers. "We know how responsible you are. This is just a technicality to help you get started." Those words would come back to haunt me later. Once I moved in, I spent every free moment making that house my own. I painted each room myself, installed new light fixtures, and gradually updated the kitchen with secondhand appliances I found online. On weekends, I taught myself basic plumbing and tiling by watching videos online. The bathroom renovation took 6 weekends of non-stop work, but the transformation was worth every blister and backache. Over the 5 years I lived there, that house became my sanctuary. The garden in the back bloomed with perennials I planted. The creaky third step on the staircase became a familiar sound of coming home. I knew every inch of that place because I had poured my heart into it. Throughout this time, my younger sister Amanda followed a completely different path. 6 years younger than me, Amanda had always been the baby of the family, the one who got away with everything. While I worked multiple jobs in college, Amanda got a full-ride scholarship, but still received a monthly allowance from our parents for spending money. When her car broke down, our parents bought her a new one. When she wanted to study abroad, they covered all expenses. It was always this way, but I tried not to let it bother me. We were different people with different relationships to our parents. After college, Amanda worked briefly at a marketing firm before quitting to find herself. She traveled through Europe for 6 months on our parents' dime, then returned to move back into her old bedroom at their house. Eventually, she found a job at a boutique PR agency, but she still relied heavily on our parents for financial support. 2 years ago, she started dating Tyler, a software engineer she met through friends. He seemed nice enough, stable, and kind, though somewhat passive. They got engaged after just 10 months together, and our parents were ecstatic, immediately offering to pay for the entire wedding. Through all of this, I had my boyfriend James. We'd been together for 3 years after meeting at a charity fundraiser. He was a structural engineer who understood my independence and supported my dreams. When I bought my house, he helped with renovations but never pressured me about moving in together. He had his own place and respected that this house was my achievement, my space. "You're the most capable person I know," he told me once while we were installing kitchen cabinets. "Most people talk about their dreams. You actually make yours happen." Little did either of us know that dreams can be stolen right from under you, even by the people who are supposed to protect them. It started with a piece of mail. An ordinary envelope addressed to Amanda Williams at my address. I assumed it was a mistake since my sister had never lived with me. She still had her apartment across town, though she spent more time at our parents' house than her own place. I texted her a photo of the envelope. "Got your mail by mistake. Want me to forward it?" Her response came hours later. "Oh, weird. You can just open it, probably junk." The casual response should have been my first clue that something was off, but I didn't think much of it. I tossed the envelope on my counter and forgot about it until more mail for Amanda arrived the following week. This time, it was from my mortgage lender, which made even less sense. I called her immediately. "Amanda, why is the mortgage company sending you mail at my address?" There was a long pause before she answered. I'm not sure. Maybe it's because Mom and Dad put me as a beneficiary or something. I don't really know how all that works." Her voice had that artificial lightness she always used when lying, the same tone she'd used as a teenager when denying she'd borrowed my clothes without asking. "Beneficiary. That doesn't make sense. The mortgage company wouldn't send statements to a beneficiary." "I don't know, Brooke. Ask Mom and Dad. Look, I've got to go. I'm meeting Tyler's parents for dinner." She hung up before I could press further. That night I opened the envelope. It was indeed a mortgage statement, but what made my blood run cold was seeing Amanda's name listed as the property owner. My name was nowhere to be found. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. This had to be a mistake, some kind of clerical error at the bank. I immediately began digging through my home office, pulling out all the documentation from when I purchased the house. Everything appeared normal in my copies, with my name clearly listed as the buyer and my parents as co-signers. The next morning, I took the day off work and drove to the county records office. With shaking hands, I requested all documents related to my property. The clerk returned with a file containing the original deed in my name, but also a transfer of deed dated just 6 months ago, transferring ownership from my parents as co-signers to Amanda Williams. The document bore both my parents' signatures. I barely remember driving home. My mind was a hurricane of confusion and betrayal. As soon as I walked through the door, I called my parents, putting them on speaker as I spread the documents across my kitchen table. "Did you transfer my house to Amanda?" I asked without preamble when my mother answered. There was a pause, then my father's voice came on the line. They must have been on speaker too. "Now, Brooke, don't get upset. We've been meaning to talk to you about this." "Talk to me about what exactly? About how you gave my house to my sister without telling me?" My mother jumped in her voice, taking on that soothing tone she used whenever she thought I was being dramatic. "Honey, it's not like that. We just did some family planning. Amanda and Tyler are getting married soon, and they're planning to start a family right away. They need the stability of a home. And what about my stability? I've been paying the mortgage on this house for 5 years. Yes, and you can continue living there for now, my father said as if he was being generous. Nothing has to change immediately. For now, nothing has to change immediately. Are you hearing yourselves? This is my house. Technically, my father's accountant voice took over. Since we co-signed the mortgage, we had legal right to transfer the deed. We've just been thinking about the future of the family. Amanda will have children soon and you're just single. Those last two words hit me like ice water. Just single. As if my life, my achievements, my dreams were less valuable because I wasn't married with children on the way. I need to go, I said, hanging up before I said something I couldn't take back. The next day I met with my friend Diane, who worked as an attorney. Over coffee I explained the situation and showed her the documents. I hate to say this, she said after reviewing everything, but legally they might be within their rights. As co-signers, they retained partial ownership of the property. The transfer itself appears legitimate. So they can just give away my house, the one I've been paying for. Diane's expression was grim. The really messed up part is that while they could transfer the deed, they can't transfer the mortgage obligation. You're still responsible for the payments even though you no longer own the house. I felt the room spinning around me. That can't be right. That's not fair. Fair and legal aren't always the same thing, Diane said, squeezing my hand. I recommend you consult with a real estate attorney who specializes in these matters. There might be options we're not seeing. As I drove home, my shock began transforming into something else. Something hotter and sharper. Something that had been building for 34 years of being the responsible one, the one who never complained, the one who did everything right while watching Amanda get everything handed to her. For the first time in my life, I was truly angry. 3 days after discovering the deed transfer, Amanda showed up at my door unannounced. She wasn't alone. Tyler stood beside her looking uncomfortable, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "We need to talk," she said, brushing past me into the house. My house. The house I had painted and renovated and made into a home. They settled onto my couch while I remained standing arms crossed. "So I guess Mom and Dad told you," Amanda said, not quite meeting my eyes. "No, actually. I found out when your mail started showing up here. Mail addressed to the homeowner." She had the decency to look embarrassed for a moment, but it quickly passed. "Look, I know this seems sudden to you, but we've actually been planning this for over a year. Tyler and I need a place to start our family, and this house is perfect. 3 bedrooms, nice yard, good school district." The casual way she discussed my home as if I were merely a temporary occupant made my blood boil. "A year? You've been planning to take my house for a year?" Tyler shifted uncomfortably. "We didn't think of it as taking anything. Your parents said they'd discuss it with you when the time was right." "And when exactly was that going to be, when you showed up with a moving truck?" Amanda sighed dramatically. "You're overreacting as usual. Mom and Dad said you can stay until we're ready to move in. We're thinking after the wedding, so about a month from now." A month. They expected me to just vacate my home of 5 years in a month. "Have you been inside this house before today, Amanda?" She looked confused by the question. "Of course. I've visited lots of times." "No, I mean, have you been here when I wasn't home? Have you been planning where to put your furniture? Thinking about what walls to paint?" The guilty glance between her and Tyler told me everything. "Mom and Dad gave us a key," she admitted. "We've come by a few times to take measurements and plan the space. Tyler's been working on some renovation designs." "Renovation designs," I repeated flatly. "Nothing major." Tyler jumped in quickly. "Just updating a few things to suit our taste. The kitchen cabinets are a bit dated, and we thought about opening up the wall between the dining room and living room." The kitchen cabinets I had sanded and restained by hand. The wall that contained the built-in bookshelves I loved. "Show me," I said. "Show you what?" Amanda asked. "The plans, the designs. Show me what you're planning to do to my house." Tyler reluctantly pulled out his phone and opened a photo gallery. There were dozens of images of my house taken when I wasn't home, close-ups of my fixtures, my furniture, my personal space. Then he switched to a Pinterest board titled "Our House Remodel." We were thinking a more modern aesthetic, Amanda explained, apparently oblivious to my growing rage. The craftsman style is a bit old-fashioned. The craftsman style that had made me fall in love with the house in the first place. The character and history I had worked so hard to preserve while updating the functionality. Mom and Dad gave us a renovation budget as an early wedding present, she continued. $20,000 to make it our own. $20,000. After paying for her college, her car, her trips abroad, her wedding, and now my house. You need to leave, I said quietly. We just got here, Amanda protested. We have a lot to discuss about the transition. Get out of my house. Tyler stood quickly, recognizing the dangerous edge in my voice. Come on, Amanda. We can talk about this another time. But we need to finalize the timeline, she argued. We want to start renovations right after the honeymoon. Amanda, Tyler said firmly, we're leaving, now. As I showed them to the door, Amanda turned to me with an expression of genuine confusion. Why are you being so difficult? Mom and Dad said you'd understand once you had time to process. They said you'd be happy for me. I closed the door without responding and leaned against it, sliding down to sit on the floor as tears finally came. I called James, who arrived 20 minutes later with takeout food and a bottle of wine. They've been planning this for a year, I told him after explaining everything. All those family dinners, all those times Amanda asked weirdly specific questions about my work schedule. They were planning this behind my back the entire time. James listened, his expression growing darker with each detail. This is beyond messed up, Brooke. Have you talked to a lawyer yet? I talked to Diane. She says legally they might be within their rights because my parents were co-signers, but morally, this is just wrong on every level. What are you going to do? I took a long sip of wine. I don't know yet, but I'm not just going to roll over and accept this. Not this time. The next day I called my parents again. My mother answered with forced cheerfulness. Brooke, I'm glad you called. Have you had time to think things over? Yes, I have. I've thought about how for my entire life I've worked for everything I have while watching Amanda get everything handed to her. I've thought about how I trusted you and Dad to help me achieve my dream of homeownership, only to have you betray that trust in the most painful way possible. Now you're being melodramatic, my father's voice cut in. This is a practical family decision. Amanda and Tyler need a family home. And I don't, because I'm just single. That's not what we meant, my mother said quickly. It's just that your situation is different. You work in real estate. You can find another house easily. This is a perfect starter home for Amanda and Tyler's family. A starter home, I repeated. I've lived here for 5 years. I've put thousands of dollars and countless hours into making this place my home. And we appreciate that, my father said in his patronizing tone. The improvements you've made will benefit Amanda and Tyler. Nothing's been wasted. It was at that moment that something broke inside me. The last thread of hope that they might recognize the depth of their betrayal, that they might make this right. I have to go, I said. I have clients to meet. That wasn't true, but I couldn't bear to hear their voices anymore. I spent the rest of the day researching my options, making calls to financial advisors and real estate attorneys. The picture they painted wasn't promising. Because of how the deed transfer had been structured, I had few legal recourses unless I could prove some kind of fraud or coercion, which would mean taking my own parents to court. That night, as I sat in my living room, looking at the bookshelves Amanda wanted to tear down, I made a decision. If they wanted this house so badly, they could have it. But I wouldn't be the one paying for it anymore. The next week was a blur of consultations and planning. I met with financial advisor Patricia Singh to understand exactly what would happen if I stopped making mortgage payments. Your credit score will take a significant hit, she warned me. And since your name is on the mortgage, the bank can come after you for the balance of the loan. Even though my name is no longer on the deed. Unfortunately, yes. The mortgage obligation remains with the borrowers regardless of who owns the property now. And my parents, Amanda. How would this affect them? Patricia adjusted her glasses. As co-signers, your parents are equally responsible for the mortgage. Their credit would be affected the same as yours. As for your sister, since she's now the property owner, but not on the mortgage, she wouldn't have direct financial liability to the bank. However, the bank could foreclose on the property regardless of who owns it. So I'd be destroying my own credit score and my parents', I summarized. In the short term, yes. But credit can be rebuilt over time. This is a significant decision that would have lasting financial implications. Next, I consulted with real estate attorney Robert Gonzalez. "Let me make sure I understand correctly," he said, reviewing the documents I'd provided. "You've been making all the mortgage payments on this property for 5 years. Your parents were co-signers but haven't contributed financially. 6 months ago, they transferred the deed to your sister without your knowledge or consent, but the mortgage remains in your and your parents' names." "That's correct. And your sister and parents expect you to continue making payments on a house you no longer own, and furthermore expect you to vacate the property so your sister can move in." "Yes, they want me out within a month." Robert leaned back in his chair. "I've been practicing real estate law for 22 years, and this is one of the more egregious family situations I've encountered. Unfortunately, as co-signers, your parents likely had the legal right to transfer the deed. Fighting that would be an uphill battle. So what are my options?" "Well, legally speaking, you're not obligated to continue living in a property you don't own. You could move out as requested. You're also not legally obligated to make payments on behalf of the new owner, though you remain liable to the bank for the mortgage. And if I stop paying, the bank would initially contact all parties on the mortgage. After missed payments accumulate, they would begin foreclosure proceedings. The property would eventually be sold at auction, and if the sale price doesn't cover the remaining mortgage balance, they could pursue you and your parents for the difference." I discussed the situation with my closest friends Sarah and Michael over dinner at their house. I needed perspective from people who knew me well, but weren't emotionally involved in the situation. "I can't believe your parents would do this," Sarah said, refilling my wine glass. "It's not just financially devastating, it's such a profound betrayal of trust." Michael, always the pragmatic one, focused on solutions. "Have you looked into refinancing, removing your parents as co-signers?" "I tried that last year, but the bank wouldn't approve it without them. My income alone wasn't sufficient for the loan terms." "And now it's too late," Sarah said softly. "What does James think?" Michael asked. "He's furious on my behalf, but he's also concerned about the impact on my credit and financial future if I stop paying the mortgage." "It's a nuclear option," Michael agreed. "But I understand why you're considering it. They've left you with impossible choices." Throughout these conversations, a clarity began to emerge. This situation reflected a pattern that had defined my entire life. My parents had always favored Amanda, had always expected me to be the responsible one while giving her whatever she wanted. I had accepted this dynamic for decades, had worked around it, had tried to rise above it. But this betrayal was too enormous to ignore or forgive. I found an affordable one-bedroom apartment in the city closer to my office and most of my client properties. The rent was reasonable, and while the space was much smaller than my house, it had large windows and a small balcony where I could keep some of my plants. Over the next 2 weeks, I systematically packed up my life. I hired a storage unit for furniture and possessions I couldn't fit in the apartment but couldn't bear to part with. I carefully documented everything in the house, taking detailed photos of each room, each improvement I'd made. I didn't know if this documentation would ever serve a legal purpose, but it felt important to preserve the evidence of what I'd built. I also secured my personal documents and irreplaceable items: family heirlooms from my grandmother, photo albums, the childhood keepsakes that had meaning only to me. I had a feeling that once events were set in motion, I might never have access to anything left behind. James helped me move the essentials to my new apartment, setting up my bed and organizing the kitchen so it would be functional immediately. "Are you sure about this?" he asked as we sat on my new, much smaller balcony looking out at the city lights. "I'm not sure about anything anymore," I admitted. But I know I can't keep paying for a house that isn't mine, that I'm going to be kicked out of, that's going to be gutted and remodeled as if my time there meant nothing. I just can't do it. He took my hand. Then I support your decision. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together. The day before I officially moved out, I sent a formal email to my parents and Amanda. I copied my attorney, making it clear this was not a personal communication, but a legal notification. As of September 1st, I will no longer be making mortgage payments on the property at 47 Maple Street. As I am no longer the property owner, this financial obligation now falls to the current owner, Amanda Williams, and/or the co-signers, Thomas and Elaine Williams. I have vacated the property and will drop all keys in the mail slot upon final departure. Any possessions remaining in the house after September 1st are available for the current owner to use, donate, or dispose of as she sees fit. The response was immediate and panicked. My phone exploded with calls and texts from both parents and Amanda. I didn't answer any of them, instead sending a brief follow-up email. I am not available for phone conversations at this time. All communication regarding this matter should be directed through written channels with copies to my attorney. On September 1st, I made my final walkthrough of the house. Each room held memories of what I'd built, what I'd dreamed. The garden was in full bloom, the late summer flowers creating a riot of color. I took a final set of photos, not for documentation this time, but for myself, to remember. As promised, I dropped the keys through the mail slot and walked away without looking back. The first mortgage payment came due 2 weeks after I moved out. As planned, I didn't make it. The automatic withdrawal failed due to insufficient funds, as I had closed the account linked to the mortgage payments. 3 days later, my phone rang with the mortgage company's number. I let it go to voicemail. The message was professional, but firm, reminding me that my payment was overdue and requesting immediate attention to the matter. Similar calls went to my parents, judging by the flurry of texts I received from them. The bank called us about the mortgage. There must be some mistake with your payment. Brooke, this is serious. Your payment is late. Your credit will be affected. Call us immediately. We need to resolve this mortgage issue. I didn't respond to any of these messages. A week later, the tone changed. This is not a game, Brooke. You can't just stop paying your mortgage. Call us now. The bank sent a formal notice. If you're doing this to punish us, you need to stop. You're only hurting yourself. Amanda's messages were the most revealing. What the hell, Brooke? The bank says the mortgage payment is late. I don't know how any of this works. You need to fix this. My name is on the house but not the mortgage. How does that even make sense? Call me. Tyler says this could affect our credit score, even though we're not on the mortgage. Is that true? This isn't fair. The only message I responded to came from my father, who wrote, "This childish behavior needs to stop immediately. We raised you better than this." To that I simply replied, "You raised me to be responsible for myself. I'm no longer responsible for a house I don't own." After the second missed payment, formal notices began arriving at the house. Amanda forwarded photos of them to me with increasingly frantic messages. The bank says they're going to start foreclosure. If this isn't resolved, what does that mean? What happens to my house? My parents switched between threats and pleas. If you don't resolve this immediately, we'll have no choice but to take legal action against you. Please, Brooke. We know you're upset, but this affects all of us. Let's talk and find a solution. What they didn't seem to understand was that I had already found my solution. It might not be ideal, it might have long-term consequences for my financial health, but it was the only path that preserved my dignity and self-respect. During this time, the family split into factions. My Aunt Susan, my mother's sister, called me out of the blue. "I just heard what Thomas and Elaine did with your house," she said without preamble. "I wanted you to know that not everyone in the family supports their actions. What they did was wrong on every level." "Thank you, Aunt Susan. That means a lot to me right now. I told your mother exactly what I thought about it. We aren't speaking currently." She paused. "Are you okay?" Really okay. It was the first time anyone from the family had asked about my well-being rather than the mortgage situation. I'm getting there, I said honestly. It's been hard, but I'm starting to rebuild. News traveled through the family grapevine. Cousins reached out with messages of support. My grandmother, usually strictly neutral in family disputes, sent me a card with a simple message: "Standing up for yourself is never wrong. Love you always." Meanwhile, Amanda and my parents consulted their own attorney, who apparently gave them unwelcome news. Amanda called in tears. "The lawyer says I could lose the house, that the bank can take it, even though my name is on the deed. How is that possible?" "That's how mortgages work, Amanda. The house is collateral for the loan. If the loan isn't paid, the bank takes the collateral." "But I didn't take out a loan." "No, you just took my house." There was a moment of silence before she spoke again, her voice smaller. "I didn't think of it that way. Mom and Dad said it was family planning that you'd understand. They said you'd keep paying because you wouldn't want to hurt your credit score. They were wrong." After 3 missed payments, the bank accelerated the loan, demanding payment in full. When that didn't happen, formal foreclosure proceedings began. A notice was posted on the property informing all parties of the legal action. Amanda sent a photo of the notice accompanied by a single word text: "Help." I didn't respond. Throughout this time, I worked with a therapist to process my feelings of betrayal and loss. Dr. Lewis specialized in family trauma and boundary setting, and our weekly sessions became an anchor in the storm. "What you're experiencing is not just the loss of a house," she explained during one session. "It's the shattering of your fundamental trust in the people who were supposed to protect you. It's okay to grieve that loss deeply." I was also rebuilding my life in tangible ways. I established new routines in my apartment: morning coffee on the small balcony, evening walks in the nearby park. I brought clients to a coffee shop near my office rather than hosting them at my home as I used to do. James was my rock throughout everything. He never questioned my decision or pressured me to reconcile with my family for the sake of peace. Instead, he helped me furnish my new space, surprised me with plants similar to those I'd left behind in my garden, and gave me space when I needed to process my emotions alone. 3 months into this new reality, on a crisp autumn evening, James took me to dinner at the restaurant where we'd had our first date. After dessert, he got down on one knee and opened a small box containing a vintage emerald ring. "I know this is a complicated time," he said, "but it's also shown me just how strong you are, how resilient. I want to build a life with you, Brooke. A life where we're partners in everything, where we support each other's dreams and fight each other's battles. Will you marry me?" Through tears, I said yes. Later that night, as we lay in bed talking about future plans, James said something that resonated deeply. "You know what I love most about you? Your integrity. You could have kept quiet, kept paying for a house that wasn't yours, swallowed that injustice to keep the peace. Most people would have. But you refused to accept being treated that way, even at great personal cost. That's rare, and it's beautiful." For the first time since the ordeal began, I felt a genuine sense of peace. I had lost my house, but I had found my voice. Around that time, I learned through family channels that several relatives had cut contact with my parents over their actions. My cousin Ryan, who had always been close to my father, told him he couldn't respect someone who would betray their child's trust so completely. I also heard from Tyler's sister Megan, who I'd met only a few times. She sent a brief but meaningful message. "Tyler is really struggling with what happened to you. He's questioning a lot about Amanda and their relationship. Just wanted you to know not everyone thinks what happened was okay." It was small consolation for everything I'd lost, but it mattered to know that not everyone saw my parents' actions as acceptable family planning. The foreclosure process took approximately 4 months to complete. During that time, my parents made desperate attempts to save the property, including trying to refinance the mortgage themselves and remove my name entirely. However, without my cooperation and signature, these efforts were unsuccessful. Amanda and Tyler postponed their wedding ostensibly to focus on the housing situation. In reality, according to family gossip, Tyler was having serious doubts about marrying into a family capable of such manipulation and betrayal. I maintained my distance through it all, focusing on rebuilding my life and career. The experience had changed how I approached my work as a real estate agent. I became passionate about educating first-time homebuyers about the legal implications of co-signing and property rights. I started offering free seminars on protecting yourself financially when purchasing property with family assistance. Then, on a rainy Tuesday in January, I received a text from Amanda. Bank officially took the house today. We have nowhere to go. I didn't respond, but I wasn't surprised when my doorbell rang that evening. Standing in the hallway were my parents, Amanda and Tyler, surrounded by suitcases and boxes. My mother spoke first, her voice trembling. "Brooke, we know we've made terrible mistakes, but we're family, and we need help. We have nowhere else to go." I stood in the doorway of my apartment blocking their entry. For a moment I just looked at them, these people who had caused me so much pain, now expecting me to rescue them. "No," I said simply. "What do you mean, no?" My father demanded, his authoritative tone returning despite his precarious position. "I mean no, you cannot stay here. No, I will not rescue you from the consequences of your actions. No, I will not pretend we're still a normal family who helps each other in times of need." "We're your parents," my mother said, tears forming. "And Amanda is your sister. How can you turn your back on us when we have nowhere to go? 5 years of mortgage payments, countless hours of renovation work, a lifetime of being the responsible one, the one who never complained, the one who did everything right only to be betrayed in the most fundamental way possible." "The same way you turned your back on me when you stole my house," I replied evenly. Amanda stepped forward, her face red with anger or shame, I couldn't tell which. "You did this. You stopped paying the mortgage just to punish us. You knew this would happen." "Yes, I did know. Just like you knew you were taking my house. Just like you knew you were going to kick me out and destroy everything I'd built. The difference is, I was honest about my intentions." My father attempted a different approach. "Brooke, be reasonable. We're not asking to stay forever just until we can find other arrangements. We've lost everything." "No, Dad. I lost everything. You lost what you took from me. There's a difference." Neighbors began peering out of their apartments, drawn by the raised voices. Tyler looked mortified by the public scene. "Please," he said quietly. "Could we at least come inside to discuss this privately?" "There's nothing to discuss. You need to leave." "Where are we supposed to go?" Amanda cried, genuine fear in her voice. For the first time, I felt a flicker of compassion, not enough to change my mind, but enough to offer a small concession. "I can give you contact information for extended stay hotels in the area. As a real estate agent, I also know which apartment complexes have immediate openings, but you cannot stay here. After everything we've done for you," my father began, his face darkening with anger. "Thomas, stop," my mother interrupted, placing a hand on his arm. "We did this. We caused this situation." It was the first acknowledgement from either of my parents that their actions were wrong. It didn't erase the pain or repair the damage, but it was something. At that moment, James arrived, returning from his evening run. He assessed the situation immediately and came to stand beside me. "Is everything okay here?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. "We're just leaving," my mother said, pulling on my father's arm. "Come on, Thomas. Amanda." As they gathered their belongings, Tyler lingered behind. When the others moved toward the elevator with their suitcases, he turned to me. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I knew it wasn't right, but I didn't say anything. I just went along with it because it benefited us. That was cowardly, and I'm truly sorry." His apology, unlike my family's demands, seemed genuine. "Thank you for saying that, Tyler. I hope you make better choices in the future, whatever those may be." He nodded, understanding my subtle reference to his relationship with Amanda, then hurried to join the others at the elevator. After they left, James and I returned to my apartment. I sat on the couch, shaking slightly from the confrontation. "You okay?" he asked, sitting beside me. "No," I admitted. "But I will be." Later that evening, I received a text from Tyler. "We found a hotel. Thank you for the recommendations. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing standing up for yourself." I showed the message to James. "At least one of them has some self-awareness." "Do you think you'll ever reconcile with your family?" he asked carefully. I considered the question. "I don't know. Right now, I can't imagine trusting them again. Maybe someday with genuine remorse and a lot of changed behavior. But not because they need something from me. Not because they've run out of other options." "That's fair," James said, pulling me close. "Whatever you decide, whenever you decide it, I'm with you." That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in months, secure in the knowledge that I had finally broken the pattern of being the family fixer, the one who sacrificed her own needs to maintain peace. For the first time in my life, I had prioritized my own well-being over others' expectations, and despite the pain and loss, it felt like freedom. 6 months have passed since that rainy night when my family showed up at my door. In that time, I've rebuilt my life in ways I never could have imagined when this ordeal began. The early days were the hardest. I'd wake up reaching for things in places they should have been in my old house. I'd catch myself taking the familiar route home from work, only to remember halfway there that home was now somewhere different. Working with my therapist, Dr. Lewis, I learned to process these moments of grief rather than push them away. "Healing isn't linear," she would remind me. "Some days will be harder than others, and that's normal." I established clear boundaries with my family. After the confrontation at my apartment, I sent them an email outlining the terms under which I was willing to have limited contact. I would respond to messages that respected my boundaries. I would consider family gatherings in neutral locations after individual apologies. I would not discuss financial matters with them until trust had been rebuilt, which would take considerable time. My parents initially resisted these terms, insisting that family doesn't need formal rules. But eventually, as weeks passed without response from me, they began to understand that the old dynamic was permanently altered. My father sent an email acknowledging that their actions had violated my trust, though he still maintained they had good intentions. My mother called and left a voicemail that sounded more genuinely remorseful, admitting that they had prioritized Amanda's wants over my needs throughout our lives. "We took you for granted," she said. "We always knew you would be okay because you're so capable. We never stopped to think about what that cost you." It wasn't a complete understanding of the damage they'd caused, but it was a start. As for Amanda, her relationship with Tyler ended 2 months after the foreclosure. He returned to his hometown in Oregon, sending me a final message before he left. "Thank you for showing me what integrity looks like. I'm going to work on developing more of it myself." Amanda moved in with our parents, who rented a small house across town. She sent occasional texts, superficial at first, asking about my work or commenting on the weather. Gradually, her messages became more reflective. "I've been thinking a lot about how things happened with the house. I didn't consider how it would feel from your perspective. I was just excited about getting what I wanted." 3 months after the confrontation, she sent an email that showed the first real growth I'd seen from her. "I've started therapy to work on my sense of entitlement. I never saw myself that way before, but losing Tyler in the house forced me to look at my patterns. I always expected things to work out for me, usually because you or mom and dad made them work out. I'm not asking for forgiveness yet because I don't think I've earned it. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to understand what I did wrong." It wasn't a complete apology, but it acknowledged the harm in a way that her previous communications hadn't. I responded briefly, thanking her for her reflection and wishing her well in therapy. While these family relationships slowly evolved, I focused on rebuilding other connections. I reconnected with extended family members who had supported me throughout the ordeal. My Aunt Susan became a regular presence in my life, inviting me for Sunday dinners and offering the maternal guidance my own mother had often withheld. I also strengthened bonds with friends who had stood by me. Sarah and Michael, who had provided perspective when I most needed it. Colleagues who had covered my clients during the worst days of the crisis. And of course, James, whose unwavering support had been my foundation. Our engagement led to a small, intimate wedding planned for the following spring. We decided against inviting my immediate family, a choice that brought both sadness and relief. Instead, we surrounded ourselves with people who had demonstrated true love and respect for both of us. Professionally, this experience transformed my approach to real estate. I created a free workshop called Protecting Your Home, Protecting Yourself, specifically designed for first-time homebuyers considering family co-signers. I partnered with financial advisors and attorneys to provide comprehensive information about the legal implications of shared property ownership. When clients asked why I was so passionate about this particular topic, I began sharing a carefully edited version of my own experience. Far from damaging my professional reputation, this vulnerability actually enhanced it. Clients appreciated my authenticity and my commitment to preventing others from experiencing similar betrayals. One unexpected outcome was the creation of a support group for adults dealing with family financial abuse. What began as casual conversations with clients who had similar experiences grew into monthly meetings where people shared their stories and healing strategies. These connections reminded me that while my experience was painful, it wasn't unique, and there was power in breaking the silence around these issues. The financial repercussions were significant, but manageable. As expected, my credit score took a substantial hit from the foreclosure. I worked with a financial advisor to create a recovery plan, knowing it would take years to rebuild my credit worthiness. I set up automatic payments for all bills, kept credit card balances low, and monitored my credit report regularly. James and I discussed our housing future extensively. While purchasing another home wasn't feasible in the short term, we began saving for a down payment on a place we would buy together with no family entanglements. In the meantime, I grew to appreciate aspects of apartment living I hadn't expected, like the lack of maintenance responsibilities and the vibrant community in our building. I learned that Tyler had broken up with Amanda after the confrontation at my apartment, unable to reconcile himself to the family dynamics he'd witnessed. To my surprise, he reached out occasionally with friendly messages, having moved back to his hometown in Oregon. We developed a cautious friendship based on mutual respect, something I never anticipated would emerge from this situation. My parents and Amanda eventually moved to my mother's hometown in Florida, where the cost of living was lower and they could restart with distance from the shame they'd experienced locally. They occasionally sent messages or called our interactions civil but reserved. The deep trust that family relationships should be built on remained fractured, perhaps irreparably. While I no longer harbored active anger toward them, I maintained the emotional distance necessary for my well-being. Amanda sent a longer email after 6 months in Florida, more thoughtful than her previous communications. "I've been doing a lot of soul-searching in therapy," she wrote. "I never realized how much I expected the world to accommodate me, or how much Mom and Dad reinforced that expectation. I'm working now, supporting myself for the first time without help from anyone. It's harder than I expected, but also more satisfying. I understand a little better now what you've been doing all along." It wasn't complete accountability, but it was growth, and I acknowledged it as such in my response. The lessons from this experience run deep. I learned that family relationships, like all relationships, must be built on mutual respect and trust. When those foundations are violated, no amount of shared DNA can obligate you to accept continued mistreatment. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary for genuine self-respect. And perhaps most importantly, I learned that family isn't just who you're born to, but who treats you with love, honesty, and care. If you've ever experienced betrayal by those who should protect you, know that you're not alone. Your feelings are valid, and you deserve relationships that honor your boundaries. Setting limits isn't about punishment. It's about creating space for healing and growth for both yourself and those who have harmed you. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to participate in unhealthy patterns, even when walking away breaks your heart. Today, as I plan my wedding and look toward building a family based on different values than those I was raised with, I feel a complex mix of grief for what I've lost and gratitude for what I've gained. The house is gone, but the strength I found in losing it remains. That strength will be the foundation of everything I build from here forward. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who crossed your boundaries? How did you handle it? And what did you learn from the experience? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself is not just okay, it's essential. Thank you for being part of my journey, and I wish you courage in creating healthy boundaries in your own life.